What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. Today I got a little bit of a different video for you. So this is, I'm going to be reacting to a video done by a channel named Magikarp Use Fly. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, this dude's name is Matt, and he is freaking hilarious. I actually love his content, so I recommend you definitely go give him a subscription. Well, he used to run a Warhammer 40,000 channel called Dice Check, and it was actually one of the channels that really got me into Warhammer because they had a very unique way of playing Warhammer with their friends where they would they talk shit, right? it was like bro down. They were playing 40k like they were bros. They weren't being, it wasn't everything's yes sir, no sir, super crazy respectful. They were talking shit to each other while they were playing, and they were having a fun time. So I actually really loved Dice Check's content. Now, Matt went through a little bit of a burnout, and I completely understand. He's at a much higher level of success than I am, and even I can understand some of the pressures of like constantly needing to push out content for you. And he recently returned back to the content building world, and he started with this video, which is about why he hates Warhammer 40,000. Now, this is no shade on him. I just think a lot of his opinions here kind of suck. But that's okay. He's going to give you some descriptions of why he feels certain ways about 40k, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a different opinion on why I think his feelings towards 40k are really towards something else, and it really doesn't apply to 40k at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of times the complaints that I hear people say about Warhammer 40k are really nonsensical. 40k has definitely got some things to complain about. For example, like balance can be a bit of an issue. The cost of models, I completely understand, can be a bit of an issue, but a lot of the complaints that I hear people say about the game themselves is just really just kind of nonsense, or it might be a valid complaint, but it's a complaint that is true for every single popular game in existence. And so he's going to give you a couple of them. I'm going to react to it. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I think is just completely unreasonable. Some of the things that he actually complains that are very reasonable about the way GW handles business. And we'll get into it. I think it's just really good content. It's a great thing for us all to kind of explore together as we really engage in loving our hobby even more. There's some things that are valid to complain about. There's some things that are like, no, it's part of the game. Just freaking, I don't know, buck up, son. All right, well, let's get right into it. Let's hear what the man himself says. Matt, I love you. I appreciate your content, but I just disagree with you. So let's do it. Here we go.
Started with this with everything I hated about Warhammer 40k. I think that this video is so long overdue because there was a lot of problems that I had with Warhammer 40k, and I kind of talked about it a little bit in my return video. There's like a small segment there, and I might as well just like go for the full tangent of why I ended up hating Warhammer 40k. I did branch off and do my own Warhammer 40k content and stuff with like Bricky, Demeki, John P, awesome Raph, things like that. Created a Dice Check channel, and it did really well. But behind the scenes, I was crying on the inside because of how awful I felt about this game. I'm not gonna lie, I did drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, as does everybody that plays Warhammer 40k. Honestly, Warhammer 40k is kind of like League of Legends in the sense of like, once you're in it, the people that are in it want to keep you in it for as long as they can, and basically they'll just like keep trying to inject you with some fucking heroin, so in that way, you're like, oh, maybe it is good, and that's kind of what happened. But anyway.
Yeah, dude, anyone that you're playing any game with who you're having fun with, they want you to keep playing with them because it's fun. I don't know, whenever I play Monopoly with, like, my parents, they want me to keep playing Monopoly with them.
Oh. Another PowerPoint presentation. Why do I love making PowerPoints now? I feel like I've gotten to the threshold of when I hit 30 years old of just being like, man, fuck it, I'm gonna be a freak in the sheets. So first off, let's start off with everything that I actually loved about Warhammer. Building the models, painting the models, doing all that stuff. That's probably one of my favorite things about the hobby, was being able to be creative and to be able to be like, hey, I want to make this model look like Vaporwave, and then do that, and then just like be able to do that. I want to make this thing galactic looking. Boom, I can do that. Super cool stuff. Like, I really like building the models. I like doing my own little customized models. Like, that was a lot of fun. And then painting them and all that stuff. Like, that was a great time. I enjoyed doing that a lot. In fact, I would probably do it more or anything like that. I really did love that about Warhammer. It was probably my favorite part. And then also probably also the game. Like, the game was also a lot of fun. When I was playing the game and everyone was having a good time, it really is a good beer and pretzel type of game where you just go up to each other. You're like, hey, what are you doing for like 4 hours this weekend? All right, bet. Let's go play some games, throw some dice, drink a beer, eat some pretzels, suck each other's dick. Playing the game, painting the models.
Not so sure about that last part, but I completely agree. It is a badass game to play, and I love throwing down with the bros, having a beer, eating pretzels. I'm not really a pretzel guy. I eat a little more keto than that, but I completely understand the sentiment, at least.
things like what my friend Kenny would say, where he would say, trying to get the high points or trying to get the high score on my list, trying to fit as much stuff as I possibly can into my roster. Like building an army in this game was so much fun.
Yeah.
I would literally stay up for like 4 hours just on my phone on like Battlescribe or something. It was kind of crappy when Games Workshop was like, hey, guess what, Battlescribe? We're going to try and take you over. And then it was like, oh my God, awful. Anytime that Games Workshop was like, we're going to meddle in the things that doesn't need to be fixed, and we're going to try and make it worse. That's basically GameStop's slogan. We will do our best to make this worse. It's like dealing with a manipulative relation. Anyways, okay, things I loved about Warhammer. I'm sorry. Throwing dice. I love throwing dice. That's pretty much it. That's like, honestly, being able to, like, especially since I had armies like Tyranids, where I would have like, literally, I would build an army where I have to throw 100 and like, it's like ASMR to me. It was you're a very social person, which is what I am. I'm a super social person. And so being able to have that nice camaraderie when you are playing with somebody, it's like second to none. It's like the complete opposite of going into a Call of Duty lobby. It is so much fun playing with other people. And now let's get into the things that I disliked about this hobby. The amount of...
Okay, let's pause here just for a second. I'm just going to back up here just so we can take a look at his list. Here's the deal. I like his list. I think his list is great. These are wonderful things to love about Warhammer, and I think most people would probably be agreeing with most of them. Most people, I don't particularly enjoy the hobby aspect of it, but most people enjoy building the models, painting, playing the game. The game is actually great. Throwing dice is super fun, and the camaraderie is one of the biggest, most important things about Warhammer 40,000. Actually, it's one of the biggest selling points in my opinion. It's one of the things that we don't get a lot of in this world anymore. I don't know about you guys, but going into my 30s as an adult, sometimes making friends outside of the office or outside of the gym becomes very challenging. And a lot of your relationships tend to be online relationships. So having a place where you can go in and you can meet up with your friends and you can just hang out and honestly even make new friends as an adult is pretty dang sick. And that is one of the greatest advantages that 40K really gives over basically anything. Yes, because you just really do it online. You can play TTS, but TTS is not the same. I use TTS all the time to train and improve, but TTS is not as fun as in real life. Let's be super clear. All right, so let's get right back into it, and let's start listening to some of the things that Matt does not like about Warhammer 40,000. We're just going to do this. Here we go.
Of useless books and magazines. This never changes. It never changes. It is so... disgusting. And this is like one of the first parts that I realized about this hobby was that when you start playing this game, the amount of useless books that you have to purchase is unfathomable. And like, you can do things where you can go on something like Telegram, or you can like find sneaky ways like Discord groups where you can find like PDFs of an army and stuff like that, and then play it off that way. Honestly, and this is coming from somebody that did play it for a very long amount of time, having a book is so much easier when you're trying to search through your rules. And it's a lot easier to debate with somebody on, no, I'm right. This is how it's written in this book. This is how it's written in the errata and all this stuff like that. So you have to be on top of these books. And like, you're really only paying for like a small portion of them, and the rest of the book is like whatever. But there are countless rule books, codices, and supplements that you need to purchase. You have to buy the core rule book, which is already like $60 or something like that. Then you have to buy your Codex, and then your Codex, it costs like around like $40 or something like that. And then you have to buy any supplements that go along with it. So like, if there's any updates, right? Because this isn't like a video.
Yeah, so basically what Matt is talking about here, for those of you who are playing in 10th edition, this really isn't a thing, but in 9th edition and 8th edition, and basically every edition before 10th edition, this was actually a really big problem. And it was part of the rules bloat, right? Because 40K would have to keep the editions going, and in order to do so, they would have to release a new book that you would then have to pay your $40 for, which is going to have new rules. So it was not unconceivable for you to have an army, say like Tyranids at one point in time, that would require 4 different texts. Like, you would have to have 4 different books to have. You got your Leviathan supplement, you got your White Dwarf supplement, you have your, and it was actually a ton. Not to mention, they would have these printed manuals, which is where you would get your points updates that would come out every 6 months to a year, and it was a lot. So if you were playing in 9th edition, this critique, honestly, I'm with you. Yeah, I think Games Workshop deserved this critique. I don't really think Games Workshop could have done anything different about it. So while yes, it's a critique, it's not necessarily a condemnation of Games Workshop at all, because that's the only way they could have done it. Now in 10th edition, where we're getting all these digital updates, it's exactly where Games Workshop should have moved, and it's what they have done. So while yes, I completely understand this complaint, I don't really think it's not something that's wrong with 40K. It's something that was annoying in the time when he was playing, which was 9th edition. As far as I know, he hasn't played in 10th edition at all. He released this video during 10th edition, though. It's just not a concern anymore, so I don't really consider this to be a concern. And so he goes on to talk about some other problems with the cost of publication, that they expire, all these things. Basically, everything that he's complaining about here is very real, but it's no longer real in 10th edition. That is actually gone, Games Workshop. So basically, every complaint that you made, Matt, very valid. I would agree with you, but Games Workshop said, cool, I agree. And they fixed it, more or less. The only thing that I will say Games Workshop still probably, they really just need to do is they need to update to full digital rules. Meaning, like your codex, you should just be able to buy a $15 codex key. They shouldn't force you to buy a physical codex, because not everyone wants the actual physical book. They just want the rules on their app, which, by the way, the Games Workshop app is pretty awesome. Like it works really well. So they would still need to update to having the codex just be only available as a not only available as a digital purchase, but maybe available as a digital purchase or as a physical purchase if you want to be a collector. So Matt, honestly, complaints, it made a lot of sense for 9th edition, but you're complaining in 10th edition. It's when you made this video, and it's no longer a really valid complaint because all these things are more or less fixed. But now he's going to get into the next part, which is probably something that a lot of people are going to hold into a little bit of a deeper understanding, and they're probably going to agree with him a lot. And I'm probably going to agree with him on this next part too. So let's jump right into it.
Dude, they're trying to keep the whales interested inside of this game so that they can keep. We both know that. I've talked about it in the documentaries that I've made about it. There's a high cost of individual models and units, and it's expensive. It gets so expensive. And you can do things like buying proxies, but then depending on where you go, proxies might not be okay. You can do things like 3D printing, but then now that tournaments are more catered towards Games Workshop, and Games Workshop is like, hey, this is now the Games Workshop tournament officially for Warhammer. You can't bring your 3D printed models there. And I did things where I would buy so
let me pause for just a second. So that's actually really true. A lot of Games Workshop events do say that you can't really bring 3D printed models, although I do know for a fact that they are exceptionally relaxed. I know a lot of people who have gone with completely 3D printed armies. Matter of fact, GW is hilarious. GW has featured fully 3D printed armies on their website as being beautifully painted, which is actually pretty hilarious. So this is a bit of a I understand the complaint, but also at the same time, what you're saying is, oh, wait, Games Workshop doesn't want me to steal their IP and then use it in their own tournaments. Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Like, honestly, you're not allowed to complain that the company doesn't want you to steal their property. Like, that's kind of a silly complaint if you think about it. Now, I do get the complaint of high cost of models, because cost of models are going up pretty intensely. To be clear, everyone, this part is actually really important if you haven't heard this. Games Workshop has not raised their prices the same as everyone else. So Games Workshop has actually kept their prices at shockingly low. And I do like Games Workshop, but I definitely call them out when they screw up. The amount of increase in cost for their models that they've gone is like 50% what the cost of inflation for their actually producing them. Maybe not 50%, but it's significant. It's like 25-ish% if I remember correctly. I did a deep dive on all of their financials. I should release that video in a little bit. So actually, don't quote me on the actual number, but trust me, it is actually really significant how little they've raised the cost of the models versus how much their cost of production has gone up. Now, yes, Games Workshop has continued to be very profitable because they're growing at an astronomical rate, because they have made an amazing product, which is the game of Warhammer 40K. But yeah, so that's just not a real complaint, Matt. Sorry, dude. I can't steal, and I can't steal this company's property, so I'm not allowed to play at their tournaments. Come on, dude. Come on. You're better than that. All right, let's keep going.
What's it called? Recasts. Across the seas in frickin' China, so then I can get models from there, because it became so expensive, especially when I was running Dice Check and there were so many models that we had to buy. It was literally insane how much money I would have to spend with everybody in order to even make things. And then that's not including also your terrain. There's so much cost of enjoyment that you have to spend up front in this game that makes it so hard to even get started.
Pause. All right, so that is not real at all. For example, if you're at any basically club, the club will have all the terrain for you. That's one of the reasons why we actually join gaming clubs, because it's a lot easier. My brother has a garage, by the way, where he made all of his terrain out of styrofoam. Me growing up, we played with beer cans and like cardboard. So it's like, no, you do not have to pay for the terrain. What Matt is talking about right here is the cost as a business owner. So he's a professional streamer. Once again, way more successful than me, but he had a Warhammer business where, yes, they did have a crazy high cost because they did have to buy all the models and they would have to buy all the terrain so that they can give you a visually pleasing appeal. That is not a critique of 40K. That is you complaining about being a business owner, my man. So that complaint just belongs in a completely different video. Now, I would agree with you that, yes, once again, the cost is very high, but come on, dude, you're not allowed to complain about the cost of running a business when we're talking about the cost of playing in a hobby. It's not even remotely the same thing. You do not have to buy every single army and buy every single model for every single army range to play the game. That is you as a business owner that you have to do that strictly, and that does not apply to Warhammer 40k. But once again, this is why you hate 40k, not necessarily why other people would hate 40k. I'm just providing commentary on here because some people will listen to this and they might get a little influenced by your opinions. So I just want to give a little bit of a counterpoint. Let's keep going.
And then once you get started, then you have to pay the most expensive thing in the world, which is your time. And you have to spend that time in order to make these models, build them, paint them, and then play them. And playing a game is like 4 to 5 hours. And then there's also even special edition and rare models priced even higher. So like, for example, I wanted Biovores.
Legends, dude.
Biovores, I love this whole Spore Mines thing and being able to trap people places. And it was one of the most fun things I've ever done.
Okay, so you get it. He hates how expensive it is. He's going to complain about, oh, well, this rare model costs more money. Listen, dude, if you don't want the rare model, you don't buy it. Like, you don't complain about it, right? Like, now, sometimes there is a complaint that he's going to get to here, too, which I do completely agree with. I'm just going to go ahead and head it off right now. Games Workshop, sometimes they don't even have the model available for purchase. That's a problem. They need to fix their supply lines because their supply lines are still a little screwed up. And sometimes you just can't purchase what you want to purchase. And that is a problem. And that is a very valid complaint. I completely agree with them on that. I'm just going to kind of skip ahead here a little bit. Basically, he's just moaning about the cost of 40K, I don't make very much money. I'm pretty close to being full-time on YouTube, but it's not like I'm making tons of money. Trust me, I'm barely making rent here. But this guy right here was making a ton of money on his YouTube channel, and he's complaining about how much he has to spend on it. That's totally fine. I'm not trying to count your pocketbook, but it's not the same. Not everyone else is trying to purchase 12 2,000-point armies. Everyone else is trying to purchase 12 5,000-point collections so you can make multiple things so that you can stream it with. Now, if you were trying to complain about, hey, how hard is it to be a Warhammer streamer? Dude, on point, I think I completely agree with you. So I'm going to just go and pause it here. I'm going to skip ahead because he's bitching and moaning about the cost of 40K, which I think most of us can bitch a little bit about and moan a little bit about the cost of 40K. But let's get to the next complaint.
So you have this constant pressure to keep up with the latest releases of things, not just in rules, but also in models, and then also in game styles, different ways to play the game, different terrain, different play mats, different sizes of tables. You have to constantly keep up with the latest releases, and it's just so exhausting. And like one of the things that pissed me off the most was
so just real fast, different sizes of tables. I think it was from 8th edition to 9th edition, the table size got a little bit different. So that's what he's talking about there. So when he transitioned from 8th edition to 9th edition. And an edition swap is once every 3 or 4 years. I mean, that's fair. I can complain. I guess now you got to get a new battle mat or something, which of course you don't have to. You just got to mark it out. But as a YouTube streamer, you're going to need to.
Was that I loved Monster Mash. I loved making like really big lists where it was just like 6 or 7 monsters on the table, and I'm just like, let's go have fun and do this whole thing. And I bought 2 Democarians, and then Crusher Stampede came out, and then they became so strong. And I'm like, oh man, I also want to try this Scythe Hyrule. It's from Forge World, so I have to get it from a different way. Oh, what about the Harridan? I have to get it from a different way. And like those things cost so much freaking money, man. Like, it's so expensive buying these things. And then once the new book came out, I couldn't even use those models to their full potential anymore. Like I had to shelve them. So I just wasted like $200, $100, whatever, how much it was on these models. And then all of a sudden I can't play them anymore. And you can play the whole, oh, well, you could have just 3D printed them. Not everybody has a 3D printer. Not only that, but their STLs can be somewhat hard. And then like, it could take a while to print it, and then maybe it doesn't even work right or something like that. You can't just solve problems by just being like, well, you could just 3D print it. Again, the whole heroine analogy. Oh, well, you can make it cheaper by reusing needles. Like, that's not the point. The point is that Games Workshop pushes so much stuff onto you that you have to pay for that makes it so freaking upsetting to play the game. Like, you want to love this game. You want to have a great time with it. But Games Workshop is constantly punching down on the people that play the game that it makes it difficult to, like, to really, truly love and enjoy the game. You have...
Okay, so basically... Let me kind of wrap this up. So I think what's happening is I think this is what his complaint is. He doesn't like the idea that sometimes your models will get nerfed, and then you don't want to use them in your army anymore because they're a lot worse. And to a certain extent, I actually understand and I can agree with this. Like, for a lot of people who were playing orcs in this edition, you would have orcs that were 30 points. They had a 4-up Field of Pain on the Codex release, and so people went and bought 18 orc meganobs, right? So they could run the 18 meganobs in the army. Well, then they got a crazy nerf. It wasn't that they just got, a few points more expensive. They got 25 points more expensive, and then their rules got nerfed as well. So this is actually a complaint that I can agree with Matt on. This is actually a bit of a problem, right? So Games Workshop, they need to stop the death nerfs unless it's just 100% necessary. Making a unit 25% more expensive already means that you're not going to be using it as much. When you do that and you slap a rule that was good but not necessarily broken, they would have a 4 Feel No Pain for 1 turn a game, which is good. Don't get me wrong, which is actually really good. I would agree that those meganobs should have gone from 30 points to 35. But the fact that people who just went out and bought 18 of them, there's literally no point in running them because they're just shit. Yeah, I mean, Games Workshop, I think they can be a little heavy-handed with their nerfs sometimes. I think it's better for them. That's something that Games Workshop can improve on is how they do nerfs. And just in general, you can be a little more gentle with it. So I would agree with Matt on that. Like Games Workshop sometimes punishes your toys a little bit too much, and that can really leave you feeling raw and feeling you rubbed like you're being rubbed the wrong way. So I fair play, Matt. Fair play.
Cost of paints and brushes and modeling tools. Things like paints are very cheap, especially for doing things like inking or stuff like that. You have to always buy new paints. You have to always buy new brushes based on putting into account the price of food that you have to spend when you're there. There's a lot of money that you have to invest in order to even enjoy the game to its full potential. And like a lot of places, they're like, oh, we don't want you to be bunking with the same person or bunking with like a couple of guys. We want you to have your own hotel rooms. Like, fuck off already. The event already costs like $100 for a basic like ticket to get into the game in order to even play. And you're telling me I have to pay $300 per night in order to also stay there? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Like, shut up. And then we got...
All right, let's just take 2 seconds here. Basically what he's saying is that it's expensive to enjoy the hobby. Yeah, bro, hobbies are expensive. So you have to update your painting brushes. You have to update your paints. Of course you do. Of course you do. You're not allowed to complain that you have to buy new paintbrushes and paints. Shut up, dude. That is like... All right, I'm sorry, that was a little aggressive. I shouldn't tell you shut up because I actually am a fan of Matt's. But dude, that is ridiculous that you're complaining that you have to buy paints and brushes for the models, which is the big part of the hobby that you have to paint. Like, come on, dude. Now, as far as entry fees for tournaments, the only reason to complain about that is if you're interested in tournaments. If you just want to play Warhammer with your buddies and you're playing Beerhammer, not a concern. If you think tournaments are too expensive, don't go to the really expensive tournaments. Go to cheaper tournaments. I don't think there's any issues with that. I don't think there's any issue with that at all. It's capitalistic society. People can host tournaments. They can charge whatever the heck they want for them. Travel and accommodations, very expensive, dude. I agree with you. I wouldn't really complain about it though. Like I agree that it is expensive if you want to travel for tournaments. As far as a tournament telling you that you're not allowed to split a hotel room with someone else, I am calling BS on that. I don't believe that has ever happened. I've been to a bunch of tournaments, dude, and I've never had a tournament organizer try to tell me who I am and who I'm not allowed to room with. I'm a grown man. If a tournament organizer told me that I'm not allowed to spend my money on a hotel room and split the cost with someone else, I can't imagine like how I would actually react to that. But I can pretty much promise you, as long as you're not living in like a communist country where they control where you spend your money, then no, there's no tournament organizer who's telling you who you are and who you are not allowed to share a room with. That is, I have no idea where that even came from, dude. That sounds just like lunacy. Yeah. So let's get into the next part.
To also stay there, get the fuck out of here. And I was like, no, there isn't really a power creep. Until it got so bad
there's 100%
there was a very obvious power creep.
Yes.
Like, it got 100%. So bad during 9th edition.
This is real.
That, like, I literally couldn't play the armies that I enjoyed. There was an imbalance in game mechanics constantly. Like, when Tyranids came out, when the new book for Tyranids came out, holy shit. Like, they were so overpowered, I couldn't even play my army without feeling terrible. I couldn't play my army with anybody. Even when I made a bad list, like, a really bad list, it would still dominate because there was just so many tools that I had. You take that Codex and you compare it to something that released in the very beginning, like Space Marines, and it's so obviously overpowered.
Yeah, that's true.
And there were so many imbalances in game mechanics. Like, Tyranids were so overpowered I couldn't play them without feeling bad. Harlequins were so overpowered when they first released in this new edition, or in 9th edition, that I felt bad playing them. I felt bad playing Slanesh after a while. I felt bad playing, like Chaos Demons. I felt bad playing, like, any of the armies that I enjoyed playing, even like Grey Knights. All 4 of those armies that I had were so overpowered, it was upsetting to play these games because they were so imbalanced. Like, the game would literally last 1 round and then my opponent would give up. And it sucked. it really sucked. It took all of the fun of this game and tossed it out the window. And then like constantly you have newer models and units being so overpowered. Like what is it, Eradicators? When Eradicators came out, so overpowered. They would just nuke something so fast. And it was just so annoying to have to deal with because there's nothing you can do about them because they are so overpowered. And that's what they kind of do a lot. And so there's a frustration.
Okay, so here you go. I'm on board with this. So if you guys didn't play it in 9th edition, this was a real problem. Like straight up, the Tyranids Codex came out, you can't beat it. It cannot be beat. The Votann Codex was so busted broken that it had to be nerfed before it was even legal to play. Like, the entire country of Germany banned Votann before the Codex was even legal to play with. It was that broken. So this was a huge problem in 9th edition. And if you were playing in 9th edition, man, these completely valid complaints. I think GW really screwed the pooch on all that. And that was a big issue. Now, in 10th edition, what I'm noticing is it's not nearly as big a problem. This will always be a little bit of a problem. Simply because the codex writers for Games Workshop are not big on playing the game, so they're trying to make cool interactive codexes. Which Games Workshop, please come on, we need new codex writers. But this is being mitigated a ton by the super frequent balance patches. So GW has been addressing this issue. Very valid complaint, Matt. I completely agree with you. Like, I've got nothing to argue with you on this one. Yeah, power creep is way too big a deal. But it is now being mitigated super, super well in 10th edition to the point where right now we are at the most balanced the game has ever been. It's almost completely balanced. T-Stones are a little too strong. But that's kind of about it. You've got some really strange win rates for certain builds, like AC/DC Chaos Space Marines have a really high win rate, but Chaos Space Marines are not busted. Like, there really is no actual busted thing in the game right now. There's some armies that are clearly stronger than others, but the balance is so much better, and having these balanced data slates is freaking sick. So, but that's now in 10th edition. Back in 9th edition, when you were doing most of your playing, yeah, dude, that was a huge freaking issue, and I don't fault you for that complaint at all. All right, and I think we're closing in on it, so we're going to get to the last complaint, and we'll see what we think about that one.
Leads us to time consumption. There is a lengthy, there's so much time that you have to spend playing this game.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lengthy setup and teardown. When you start playing a game, you have to go to a store and you have to reserve a spot at a game store or have someone that you can play inside their home or whatever, right? Yeah. So like, let's say that you have to reserve a spot at a game store. You go to the game store, you have to get there like 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early. So then that way you can get there. Then you start setting up the game. You have to then wait for your friend to come by to play it. You have to set up the terrain. Then you have to be like, all right, now that the terrain is kind of set up, let's roll for the mission. You roll for the mission together. You're like, okay, you set up your deployment zone. You do all that stuff. And then you have to make like a line of dice in order to make the deployment zone. And then from there, then you could do something where it's either you rearrange the terrain or maybe you do the FLG thing where you take turns placing down terrain. Jesus Christ. And then you have to tear everything down, pack everything up. You have to take your models out as well. There's hours and it takes such a long time to models. It is a
okay. So yeah, time. Okay, if your complaint is that it takes too long, cool. I get that. Yeah, the game takes a long time. It's a 3-hour game. I guess it's hard to comment on that. Like, if it takes you too long to play, and you don't have time for it, then it's not the hobby for you. So I guess that's a fair complaint. That's why that's a great reason for Matt to play a different game, because he just doesn't have the time to set it up and tear it down. I get that. No complaint on that. Let's see if he's got anything else to say. Let's just go ahead and zoom through here.
Constant thing. You aren't just going to stop one day and be like, I no longer have to do it anymore. Unless you buy everything.
So let's just get to his closing thoughts. So he just did all of his time consumption problems, and he's going to give us his closing thoughts here, and then we'll kind of wrap up our video with our final thoughts as well. Okay, so here we go.
Crud that you have to do with this game. That is all the reasons why I don't like Warhammer 40,000, why I hated the game, and why after a while I was just like, I'm not playing this game anymore, and I just don't care. That's why. Basically, I stopped drinking the Kool-Aid, and I was like, I ain't doing this no more. I'm done. This is the last straw. I'm not playing this fucking game anymore. Oh, 10th edition is going to come out. Kiss my nuts, Games Workshop. Like, this company, the company of Games Workshop is such a cesspool, and it's so sad because the IP is good, but everything that Games Workshop does, it just like, they just shit on anybody that cares about the game. And they feel like the hobby is like null and void, or like they can do whatever they want with the hobby and people will buy it. And that's basically the truth.
Okay, so here we go. Basically, Games Workshop is not a POS company. They're actually quite a good company. The fact that they even have balanced data slates and stuff, guys, back in, I think it was like 7th edition, or not 7th edition, but A long time ago. I mean, I can't remember. There was one period of time that went 7 years before there was a single balance update. And that was when Workshop didn't care about people. Currently, they have the Meta Watch videos that they're coming out where they're trying to communicate with people. They're hosting their own tournaments. They're trying to bring people into Atlanta for the World Championship of Warhammer. They're hosting a narrative World Championships as well, which is not competitive for people who don't care about the competitive play. They're releasing different game styles, their boarding actions, their combat patrol. They're releasing tons of information. And the constant balance status slates is like a love letter directly to their fans. Does that mean Games Workshop is perfect in every single aspect? Absolutely not. But when you say that it's like drinking the Kool-Aid, I mean, you can describe it that way, I suppose. But I really think most of the complaints that he had, which were cost, which, first off, fair. It is an expensive hobby, but you know that going into it because you can see the cost of things. If you don't want to spend that money on this hobby, that's a reasonable cost and you should get another hobby. Matt, I'm not trying to count his pocketbook, but I know the guy is very successful on YouTube, and I'm pretty darn sure he knew what the expense was. And being a business owner owning multiple channels, I'm certain he knew what it was to be a business owner as well. Now, he might not have considered all the hidden costs of running a Warhammer YouTube channel, so that can be a very real cost that can surprise you, which might have cost him a bunch of stress. So once again, not trying to count his pocketbook, but anyone who gets into this hobby already knows that it is a relatively expensive hobby. Like you're not, this isn't the game for you if you work at McDonald's. It's just not, right? It's just not. But saying that Games Workshop doesn't give a shit about their clients and their people is just kind of ludicrous. Like they hired a competitive game balancer to make sure that the game is balanced because of the valid complaints that you had about the game balance. So more or less, I feel like most of the complaints Matt has here is and why he currently hates 40K has to do with the way that he was running his YouTube channel. Having to, you cannot complain that you have to buy paint so that you can paint your models. Like, stop. Like, just stop. Like, that's not a real complaint. And there's no way a tournament organizer ever told you you're not allowed to share a hotel room with someone else. I just don't believe you. Like, I don't believe you. But yeah, man, I can see that there were a lot of frustrations with trying to run like a battle report channel. I completely get it. I'm sorry you did quit because I loved your channel. I thought it was awesome. I think you're hilarious. Even in this video, I think you're hilarious. Just the way you phrase things is super funny. Overall, I think the complaints I agree with was power scaling back in 9th edition was bullshit. Completely agreed with you. And I have a huge issue with that as well. If this is if it's too expensive for you, it's too expensive for you. But like, and you shouldn't join the hobby if it's too expensive for you. That's okay. There's other hobbies. And then lastly is the time commitment. Like if it's too much time to set up and tear down a table, okay, there's other games for you. Like it's just not a game you should play. Those seem like very valid complaints, and that makes sense why you don't play Warhammer 40K anymore. Anyway, I disagree with you on a lot of the complaints that you had. I think they were made up, and I think that you were being overly melodramatic about a bunch of it, and then some of them I think were completely valid, and I would completely agree with you. There are valid complaints, and then there are I'm just bitching and moaning, and this video had a healthy amount of both. Guys, Magikarp used Fly. Matt was an amazing League of Legends player. He's got a bunch of hilarious content up there. He's recently gotten back to streaming on YouTube. I don't know if he's streaming, but he's gotten back to making videos, and I think he just makes awesome content. Give him a like, give him a subscription. Boy, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below if this guy's got real complaints or if he is just being a little bit of a Debbie Downer. Let me know, and until next time, I'm out. This is Happy Crump and Wargaming. Catch you next time. Bye.